The courtroom falls silent as the judge delivers the final sentence. A jury from this community found Mr. Ferguson guilty of 4 counts of manslaughter by culpable negligence. The victims were Trinidad Hernandez, a grandmother, age 50; Miley Cruz, a 1-year-old infant; Marvin Cruz, age 9; and Yari Hernandez Marcelio, age 11. The jury was instructed under Florida law that culpable negligence means gross negligence.
Negligence, flagrant negligence, showing a reckless disregard for human life, a disregard for the safety of other people, or a conscious indifference to the consequences of the decisions that they make. With those definitions, they found that the duty of care to other human beings on planet Earth had been violated to that enhanced and flagrant standard. The defense has presented the court with 2 requests to consider for downward departure and has accurately recited in their motion that is a 2-part consideration. Number 1, whether the record evidence supports that the court could depart for a valid legal assertion, and number 2, whether examining the circumstances of the case and the mitigators and aggravators of the case, whether it should depart. First basis that is requested by the defense is that the crime was committed in an unsophisticated, isolated manner, and that the defendant has shown remorse. I understand the limitations of speaking when one is accused of a criminal offense. That lack of remorse cannot be considered for sentencing purposes absent a request for downward departure. The court for the first time today has heard Mr. Ferguson express any remorse. It appears to the court that he is remorseful, obviously, of the situation that he finds himself in and for the pain and deaths of the family. The court for the first time has heard any acceptance of responsibility for any of Mr. Ferguson's actions today. The court is hard-pressed to find that what has been asserted.
Mr. Ferguson argues that there is enough evidence to justify a downward departure from the standard sentence. He claims the court should consider special treatment for a mental disorder or physical illness as a reason for a reduced sentence.
Competent, substantial evidence to support that as a consideration for downward departure. Courts had an opportunity, as we all have, to understand the obvious nature of this tragedy. It is self-evident. I've heard from Mr. Hernandez, the husband of Trinidad and grandfather to Miley, Marvin, and Anayari, and I have tried to listen carefully and really listen to what you had to tell the court and the family, as well as Anissa Hernandez, the aunt of the children and daughter of Trinidad, and it's heartbreaking, Sabrina Hernandez, the daughter of Trinidad and the mother of Miley, Martin, and Anayari. Your anger is understood. I think it is genuine. That will be a journey, a lifelong journey that you and your family have to carry. I wish you the Lord's wisdom and guidance in that path. I've also had an opportunity to hear from Mr. Ferguson's family. I've heard from Diamond Ferguson, his daughter, Naria Ballard, from Mr. Floyd, all of which considered them to be sons and daughters of Mr. Ferguson. Mr. Ferguson was described as loving, compassionate, a provider, helpful, generous, encouraging, present, loved by many, surrounded by family and friends who are here in the courtroom and offering full support. It was also discussed of the very important, and this came from both sides, accountability and responsibility. So how do we find ourselves here at the moment of sentencing?
We are here because the jury determined that Mr. Ferguson's actions were criminal. His negligence was gross and reckless. It showed a disregard for human life and for the safety of others. The sentencing guidelines list different options, but only if there is strong evidence to support a reduced sentence.
The statutory lowest permissible prison sentence indicates a lowest permissible prison sentence of 444.15 months in the Department of Corrections, which by my math is just over 37 years. Mr. Ferguson will be 70 this September. That becomes the required sentence should the court impose sentence and find that a downward departure is not appropriate for each of the 4 counts, or a final request from the state is that because the point value exceeds a certain value, that he could legally be sentenced to life in prison for these allegations. I have listened to each of the family members. Mr. Ferguson, I have listened, really listened to your statement. I've listened to the surviving family members. The court declines to exercise its discretion to downward depart based on this being an unsophisticated, isolated, and that the defendant has shown remorse. I do so based on a totality of the circumstances, my involvement in the trial, my observations of Mr. Ferguson's testimony, and the record evidence that was presented. With that being said, the court's sentencing options are now limited to life in prison or 444.15 months in the Department of Corrections. The court is going to elect to impose a Department of Corrections sentence. Mr. Ferguson, you will be adjudicated guilty of manslaughter, culpable negligence for the death of Trinidad Hernandez. You'll be adjudicated guilty for manslaughter by culpable negligence for the death of Miley Cruz. You'll be adjudicated guilty of manslaughter by culpable negligence
for the death of Marvin Cruz and Inari Hernandez Marcilio. The court adjudicates Mr. Ferguson guilty of manslaughter by culpable negligence. He is sentenced to 444 months in the Department of Corrections, just over 37 years. The sentences will run concurrently. Given your age and medical condition, you may not outlive this sentence. That is known only to God.
There will be restitution imposed to each of the deceased victims, reserved to amount. You'll get credit for any time that you have already served. You have a right to appeal this judgment and sentence. If you wish to appeal, you must do so in writing. If you can't afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you. State, anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Defense, anything further at this time? Court will find Mr. Ferguson to be indigent for purposes of costs. You may file that documentation with the court file. That will conclude our sentencing.
4 lives lost, 1 verdict delivered, and a sentence that may last a lifetime.